Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to Cinefessions, where we talk all things media. So I know that most people put up their favorites of the year back in December, but I don't like to do that for whatever reason. I always wait until January to post my favorites from the previous year. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I have, I think, 3 different videos planned on like retrospectives about the media that I consumed in 2021, and this will be the first of them. So today we are going to talk my top 10 first time film discoveries of 2021. So what this means is, regardless of the year they were released, which could be 2021 or could be 1901, like it doesn't matter what year they were released. All that matters is that these are my 10 favorite films that I watched for the first time last year. So there's going to be a wide range of years here. I think there's one from 2021, but most of these are from earlier than that. And so the reason I don't do like my favorites from the year is just because I typically don't watch enough from that year to have like a legitimate top 10 list. Did I watch 10 movies from 2021 last year? Yeah, I probably did, but not that I'm like not that I'm excited about making a top 10 list out of, because there's a lot I still have to see, like Dune. I mean, just so many, the list goes on. And so, instead of doing that, I always do just my first time film discoveries. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, guys. And let me preface it by saying these are just favorites. So ones that I could see myself going back to in the future, ones that either, I consider now a new favorite, or ones that I just loved for whatever reason. So you might disagree with some movies that are on here. You might disagree with the order of the movies, putting some classics above some not so classics. But hey, that's just the way it goes sometimes. It doesn't really mean anything. You ask me tomorrow and this order of this list could change. Really, I just want to talk about 10 of my favorite movies that I watched last year. So that's what we're going to do today, guys. If you are excited about this video, please give me a like down below. That really does help me out. But with that said, let's not waste any more time at all. Let's dive right in to my top 10 film discoveries of 2021. So I am a huge stats junkie. I just love that type of stuff. I love screwing around in Excel, making graphs and things like that based on my data. So that's not what this video is going to be about. But if you are interested in that, in either my movie watching or my book reading, whatever the case is, let me know down below and I can definitely do a stats video showcasing kind of my consumption from last year. But one thing I did want to mention before I dive into the list is that in 2021, just looking at my first time watches, I only had 2 5-star films from the entire year and 3 4.5-star films. So that means that there were 5 movies that were rated 4.5 or above. If you go to the flip side of that, I had 5 1-star films. So it may not have been my best movie watching year, to say the least, but hey, that's okay. I still have plenty I want to talk about here, and I will probably put up my star rating down below when I start talking about each movie, but know that there'll probably be some that were like 4.5 star that are ranked lower on the list than maybe some with a 4-star rating, or whatever the case may be. My star rating is just kind of at the time of watching my gut reaction to it, and this is a little bit more I have some distance between me and the film, so I'm able to order it in a different way. So don't worry too much about my star rating, and if it's a little bit different, if the order of it is a little bit different than what my list might indicate. All right, so let's dive into this top 10 list here. So coming in at number 10 is a movie that I had 0 expectations for. Well, honestly, I really shouldn't even say that. I expected to dislike this movie because it looked ridiculous. I was watching it as a part of my 13 days of Halloween, so it's an asylum film. I just had no idea that I would be talking about it again at this point in the year. But here we are. Number 10 on my list is going to be Battle Dogs from 2013, directed by Alexander Yellin. So before you turn off the video in anger already, let me just talk about this one a little bit here, kind of justify why it ended up on my list. So like I mentioned, I watched this during the 13 days of Halloween, so the movies surrounding it may not have been the best, to say the least. And coming into this one, because it was an asylum film, if you look at some of the CGI on the box and everything, it just looked silly, and that's one of the main reasons I decided to watch it. But I was really kind of shocked by how fun this movie was. So with Battle Dogs, we are following basically, it's kind of like a zombie outbreak film, except instead of them being like The Walking Dead, the outbreak is instead these battle dogs, but they're really like werewolves, kind of super powered werewolves, I guess I'll call them. So we are following this military group as they're trying to contain the outbreak, but then things kind of take off from there. It becomes this whole like political thing and so on. So what's really cool about this movie was just the casting on this was so much fun. So the whole movie is led by Craig Schaefer, who does a great job. Like, given what he's doing here, he should not have given as much effort as he did, but boy, he does, and the movie is better off for it. On top of that, we have the little girl from Jurassic Park, Ariana Richards, I believe is her name. And then we have the Allstate man, Dennis Haysbert is in this in one of the lead roles. On top of that, you have like Bill Duke in here as well. Like, it's just a really fun cast that comes together to make this movie a lot more enjoyable than it really has any right to be. And then you have some surprisingly decent CGI. Now, mind you, this is a low budget movie. It's from the Asylum, and they always said that, like, you know, all their movies are basically $1 million budget so that they always make their money back. And given this low budget, they do a really good job. Yes, there are moments where you can definitely tell it's CGI, you can tell it's low budget, but for the most part, I thought the CGI, it didn't detract from what the film was trying to do. And I think that's kind of the best compliment you can give a low budget film that uses a ton of CGI like this. I just love outbreak movies, and I like the idea of, you know, changing up the zombie virus with this werewolf virus or this battle dog virus. And then on top of that, the political intrigue that's going on behind the scenes, it just worked. There's a ton of action. The finale isn't the best, but I think it does a pretty good job. It feels a little too small in scope than it really should be. And again, I think that just harkens back to its low budget. But with all of that aside, like, given what this movie is, you know, it's an Asylum film that was done for a very small amount of money. This is a remarkably done film, and one that I am so glad that I randomly decided to stick in at the last second for my 13 days of Halloween. So if you want to hear my full thoughts, definitely check the review here on the channel. But this is one that I understand not everyone will agree with this. Very few would agree with this, and very few would even consider putting this on a list like this. But hey, that's okay. Like, I totally respect that, and I understand that this one is not going to be for everybody, but for me, I had such a blast with it, and I'm so glad I watched it last year. So coming in at number 10, one from the Asylum, is Battle Dogs from 2013. Coming in at number 9 is going to be The Wedding Singer from 1998, directed by Frank Carrassi, I believe is how you would say his last name. So this is one of those like classics of comedy that I should have seen in the past, but for whatever reason, I just haven't. So I actually hauled this movie earlier this year on DVD. I think I found it at the thrift store or something. And so when I did that, Ken from over at Mid-Level Media mentioned that it was one of his favorite films, and so he was really happy I picked it up. So I think that was kind of the impetus, where one day my wife and I were just scrolling through like HBO Max or something, and it happened to be on there. So we hit play, and I loved it. It was so much fun. It was everything that everyone has always said it was over the years. So with this one, everyone knows what this is about, but basically we're following Adam Sandler's character, who at the start of the movie is supposed to be getting married, but then his fiance leaves him at the altar. And then it's kind of, he's at a crossroads at that point, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of his life, when he meets this other character played by Drew Barrymore, and there's a relationship that kindles there in the story about, you know, will they get together? Will they not? What will happen with these two? So it's a very simple like rom-com setup, but you're going to get that Adam Sandler comedy on top of this. And I'll be honest with you, okay, so I really like Adam Sandler, but there are some of his comedies, especially some of the earlier comedies, that I just cannot stand to watch. Like Billy Madison, for example. I hate that movie. It's just, I find it so annoying. Big Daddy is another one that I just cannot stand. Now, Happy Gilmore, I think, is really good. I really like that one. Again, on a rewatch more recently, there are some more cringy moments than I remembered, but I still really like that one. It's kind of before he goes full Billy Madison, I guess, which is kind of what he plays for so many of his movies. But this one, instead of doing that kind of goofy, stupid comedy, some of those elements are there because it's Adam Sandler. You're just not going to turn that off. But instead of that, this does feel like one of those more heartfelt movies. I really like the other one he does with Drew Barrymore, who's, what is it, 50 First Dates, I think it is. I really like that one too. It's more heartfelt, and I think it's done well. But this one is definitely better than that movie. It's funnier. It's them when they're younger, and so it just feels more energetic, I guess I would say. So you do get some of that stupid comedy that you would expect from Adam Sandler, but done in just a better package, I guess. And so when it's done in a better package, it's just more palatable, I guess I'll say. So I really enjoyed this one. It was hilarious. I'm so glad I finally watched it. So thanks to Ken over at Mid-Level Media for recommending this one, because this was definitely a great movie that I'm very happy I've now seen. So number 9 is The Wedding Singer from 1998. Number 8 on my list is going to be one of the first ones I talk about from my Neo-Noirvember month back in November. And this is going to be Blowout from 1981, directed by Brian De Palma. So this is a movie that really blew me away, mostly because of its cinematography. But on top of that, you have some amazing performances. Probably my favorite performance ever from John Travolta. John Travolta and Nancy Allen play kind of a love interest, I guess, in this movie. They are our two leads, and they do such a wonderful job. The on-screen chemistry grows so quickly and so fast. Like, it's just remarkable how well they play off each other and how believable their entire relationship ends up being. So in Blowout, it is basically a paranoia thriller. We are following John Travolta's character, who is a movie recordist. Like, he records sound effects for movies. He's out one night when he catches something. He sees it, but he also catches it in his recording that he's doing. And so from there, kind of the government takes over and it becomes this kind of conspiracy thing. So it's, did he actually see what he thinks he saw? Did he hear what he thinks he heard? Or what's really going on here? And then it just escalates like tenfold from there. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the opening of this movie, because that's what really grabbed me right from the start. Basically, like I said, he's a sound recordist, and so he's working on this low budget horror film. And so when the movie opens, it's basically a low budget horror movie opening, which I am all about. So of course I was hooked on it from that moment on. And just the cinematography in that was excellent. The use of the Steadicam was great. But then from there, it just grabbed me in a much different way as the film progressed. And so I just, there are some shots in this movie that I will never forget. The use of the spinning camera, the slow spinning camera, was brilliant. And that's not an exaggeration. It was just done so well. So I think this is definitely one I am so glad I put on my list for Neo-Noirvember, because I'd always heard good things about it, but honestly, I think it was almost underhyped, because this one really kind of just was even better than I was expecting it to be. And I did not expect that performance from John Travolta and Nancy Allen together. Like I already said, they were just perfect. And so there is so much to love about this movie, but I don't want to give any spoilers at all. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this one, definitely check out my review from Neo-Noirvember. But this was just an awesome movie. So I ended up putting at number 8, Brian De Palma's Blowout. All right, so number 7 is going to be The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. This one is from 1943, and it's directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. So this is kind of the perfect example of why I love my TBW game. So if you guys have been following the channel, you might know that I play the Letter and Prompt TBW game, or my To Be Watched game. So I haven't done it for the past couple months, but it is going to make a comeback here in February is the plan. But I wanted to get all of these videos out here at the beginning of the year, so I pushed it back another month. But this is why I love it, because if not for this, if not for randomly picking a prompt where I had 1 or 2 options from my Criterion collection to pick, I never would have watched this movie. Honestly, I don't even know how this one ended up in my collection. I must have read many, many years ago when I first started collecting Criterion, I must have read some forum post or something where somebody recommended this movie, because I never even, I don't know anything about it going into it. And so it was kind of randomly in my collection, but I am so glad that this one ended up here, because it was just a remarkable film in so many ways. So we are following essentially 40 years in the life of our main character named Clive Candy. And this movie is so far removed from anything that I could relate to. It is, he lives a life in the military, kind of the relationships he's going through, the effects that he's feeling as he's aging, things that I just haven't dealt with yet. It's just so far removed from me, yet there is so much to connect with this character regardless of all of that. This is a story about love, loss, aging, friendship. It's a story about the war. There is so much packed into this movie, and this is a long one. It's almost 3 hours long, and I remember I watched this almost a year ago now. It was back in January of 2021. And I remember it was late at night when I started it, and I had to work the next morning, but I couldn't bring myself to turn the movie off. I had to see through to the end because there was so much going on here that I was just so invested in. Now, this is not going to be a movie for everybody. This is definitely like a slow burn character study, and I know some people don't like those terms, but that's the best way I can describe it. Like, we are really focused on the characters, the lives of these characters, the relationships, their interactions. There is very little action here, and there is tons of dialogue. It is a slow moving movie. So though this one is a slow burn, I think if you really like character studies, this is one that I really recommend. Give it a shot. See if you like it or not. It almost feels like a book, but done in movie form. And let me explain that a little bit. So what I love most about reading and why I read so much every year is because I love learning about characters' lives, kind of the intimacies of these characters and their relationships. And you get that a lot more typically in a book than you do in film. Here, though, you get that. And I loved that about it. So, if you're up for that character study, if you're up for that slow paced film that may not have any relationship to who you are as a person, give it a shot. Like, try it out. See if you, see if it's something that you are able to connect with as much as I was, because if not for my TBW game, I never would have watched this. Like, I had zero interest going into it, and it just kind of blew me away. So I loved this one. I am surprised how much I loved this one. So coming in at number 7 is going to be The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp from 1943. And I really recommend checking this one out. If any of what I talked about sounds like it might be for you, this one, like I said, I watched it a full year ago, and there are just some moments in there that were so profound is the best way to describe it. Just check it out. For a much different style of film, number 6, I'm putting on my list Police Story from 1985, directed by Jackie Chan. So this was another one that I watched kind of on a whim, thanks to HBO Max. I know that Criterion does have a Police Story 1 and 2 box set that you can buy, but for whatever reason, I haven't bought that yet. I will probably correct that come July this year. But this movie was so much fun. So though you're not really watching this one for the story, it's really about the action set pieces in here. But the story on this, we are basically following Jackie Chan's character, who is he's a great cop, but he ends up getting framed for a murder, and so he's trying to clear his name. And again, like, the story is fine. Like, I had fun watching it and seeing how he would clear himself, but really why I loved this one so much and why I still remember it vividly right now, months later, is for the stunts that Jackie Chan pulls off. Some of these are just amazing. Like so first off, the opening sequence where you have this like village and all this action happening downhill of this like tiny village is amazing. And then all the way at the very end of the movie, you have just as remarkable stunts, arguably even, I don't know if they're better, but just as good, maybe even better stunts at the end, all in this mall. And it is just this packed, crowded mall that is so fun to watch him just jump from place to place, like parkouring across this entire mall. And it is amazing to watch. Not only that, though, it's just Jackie Chan is so likable. I didn't realize that there was comedic aspects to this, which, like, I've spent almost no time with Jackie Chan. So that's probably why I didn't expect it, because I do know that, you know, he is known for his comedy, but I thought that was later on in his career. But no, really, like, he's doing martial arts and comedy right from, Police Story here. And he does it so well, like, much better than I ever would have expected. There's this scene where he's like answering phones and he gets himself tied up in these phones, and it's so stupid. It's so slapstick, but the way he does it, it just works. Like, it works so well. And so this one, I had no expectations, like, of enjoying this one. And again, I was blown away. So I know that's kind of a theme here, is low expectations and being shocked. And so that's just the way it is. Those movies, I guess, kind of resonate with me the most. So that's why Police Story ends up at number 6 on my list from 1985. All right, so we're into the top 5 now, and we're going to go back to Neo-Noirvember. So coming in at number 5, directed by David Fincher, is 1997's The Game. So I am a gigantic Fincher fan. I would, and I often do, cite him as one of my favorite directors of all time. So this was a huge blind spot for me that I needed to correct, and thanks to Neo-Noirvember, I was able to do that, and I'm so glad I did, because this movie was, wow. This is one where just go into it blind if you can. I will give a small, idea of what the story is, but really go into it blind if you haven't seen it, because that's why it worked so well for me, is I had genuinely no idea where it was going to go, and the places it does go were insane. So this is one where our main character, played by Michael Douglas, is just kind of a jerk, really. He's super ultra rich and he's a jerk. And then his brother, who's kind of the black sheep of the family, he comes back, ends up telling him about this game that he got him for his birthday. And then things kind of escalate from there. I don't want to tell you what the game is. I don't want to tell you anything more than that. Check it out. So there are just some moments in this, I don't even, what do you want to call it? It's a crime noir thriller, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But there are some moments in this that were just genuinely creepy. I didn't expect it at all. But then you get from these moments that are creepy over to these really funny bits that are just how are these in the same movie? And it shouldn't work, yet it does. Literally from start to finish, that's kind of how it goes, but it works so well. It's just Fincher showing that he's a master right from the start. This obviously wasn't his first movie, but it's an earlier film. And so this is just a fantastically done movie where, again, if you want my full thoughts on it, check out my review here on the channel. But before you do that, if you haven't seen it, just go watch it and then check out my review, because literally the less you know going in, the better it's going to be. So I love this one and I cannot recommend it enough. So number 5 is 1997's The Game. Number 3 on my list is going to be Underworld from 2013, directed by Len Wiseman. So I have genuinely no clue how it took me this many years to watch this movie, because it's from 2003, which was the era where I was going to the movie theater all the time, especially when it was coming to horror movies and action sci-fi, which is this all combined into one. This one feels very Resident Evil. It is definitely from that era, and I love that era of movies. So I loved this movie. It really, you can definitely tell this is post-Matrix, and it kind of wears that as a badge of honor. It's not trying to hide the fact that it is influenced by the Matrix. This was just so much more fun than I would have guessed it to be. Again, it's from that really cool era of sci. At least I think it's cool because of my age. Some of you might be older and just don't like that era. Some of you might be younger and have no idea what I'm talking about. But for me, it just feels very high school, and so it's nostalgic. Even though I've never seen the movie before, it felt very nostalgic to me. And so that's probably another reason that it hit me in such a way. But this was just such a fun, bloody, action-packed film with just some incredible lead characters, a surprising amount of gray characters in here, so not completely evil, not completely good, and I think that's what makes it stand out a little bit more than some other movies that might be from this era. So Resident Evil is probably always my favorite action sci-fi horror hybrid from the early 2000s, but this one really moved up there as probably number 2. I can't think of another one I'd put next to Resident Evil. So this one was great, and I will mention, I don't yet own the 4K collection, but I will be correcting that in 2022, because the Blu-ray looked fantastic, but the sound was mind-blowing. It sounded so good in my player, so I cannot wait to upgrade to that 4K set and see how it looks and sounds on the new discs. So I ended up putting up at number 3, Underworld from 2003. I just realized that I may have been referring to Underworld as number 3, but that's not true. This is number 3. Number 3 on my list is Blood Simple, directed by the Coen brothers from 1984. So here is a movie, the last one from Neo-Noirvember, I will point that out. But here's one where, if not for that amazing cover art put out by Criterion, I may have never watched this movie. I am such a sucker for neon. And the cover for this was that. It was that neon lighting, and that is very prevalent in the film, so it makes sense why it was there. But I'm so glad they chose that cover, because that's why it's in my collection and why I ended up watching it for Neo-Noirvember. But with this one, we are following this, we have a husband and wife. The wife cheats on the husband, and then the husband wants revenge, and it's a revenge flick, essentially, from there. But that's really a bastardization of what this movie is about, because it is so much more, but yet very simple at the same time. It's just what the Coens are able to do with this is insane. And so the fact that this is a debut feature also remarkable. It just goes to show the like raw talent that the Coen brothers had that they will then go on to display in many, many movies after this one. But there's some remarkable performances in here. Emmett Walsh is so wonderful in his role. Just this slimy, greasy, wonderful talker that is going to, get the job done in the way that he sees fit. And he is just so slimy and wonderful in this. Frances McDormand is so great too. It almost feels like Fargo at points. There are moments that happen in this movie that kind of happen almost the same in Fargo later on in the Coen brothers filmography. So if you like Fargo, this is kind of like a Deep South Fargo, a sweaty Fargo, if you will. But it's definitely different and stands on its own. So don't let me, use that as a way to denigrate the movie or downgrade the movie at all. I think it's just remarkable how well it's done. This is another one that just had some really strong cinematography. And whenever that happens in a movie, it just sticks with me. I guess that when it comes to film is kind of the thing that really gets me the most and will stick in my simple brain the best is just the way they handle the camera movements and the shots they make. And this is another great example of cinematography done at a grade A level. So this is another one where I do have a full review of it on the channel, so I will leave it at that, but definitely check this one out if you've ignored it for whatever reason. I actually had someone in the comments the other day just talk about how the first time they saw this movie, they absolutely hated it. So then they waited a bunch of years, but just watched it again last year and really appreciated it for what it was, and they ended up loving the movie. And I'm so glad that they went back to watch it because, oh my gosh, this is just such a great movie. So can't recommend this one enough. Coming in at number 3 is Blood Simple from 1984, the last one on my list thanks to Neo-Noirvember. All right, top 2 now. Number 2 is going to be Paths of Glory from 1957, directed by Stanley Kubrick. This is another one where I have to give a shout out to my TBW game because to be fair, this one was Kubrick, so I probably would have watched this at some point in my life, but not anytime soon. And so I'm so glad that I've been playing that game because it introduced me to another one that is one of the greatest films I've ever seen, if I'm being completely honest with you. So it's an anti-war film, but done in an incredibly intelligent way. So we are following Kirk Douglas's character, which let me pause and say that Kirk Douglas is absolutely phenomenal in this role here. By far the best I think I've ever seen him in. But anyway, we are following him. He leads, I think it's like the 701st Infantry or something like that, of the French military. And they are tasked with this impossible goal of taking over this battlefield that is known as Ant Hill. So they attempt to take it over, but they're immediately overrun, and so they end up retreating. Well, in order to make an example out of them, the person that is above Kirk Douglas's character says, you need to pick 3 men and basically at random, and they will be tried for their cowardice, which is a death sentence that will mean their lives. So we start off this movie in a couple different battle sequences. Then it moves into this courtroom drama of sorts. And then it goes into this interpersonal battle. So the way that it takes these 3 different almost styles of film and combines them into one amazing movie. I just cannot speak highly enough of the work that Kubrick was able to do here. The work that the actors were able to do in this movie. The cinematography. Oh my gosh. I just talked about cinematography in the last one as well, but the way that the camera moves through the trenches as we are following Kirk Douglas's character, I have goosebumps just talking about it now. It is amazingly done. But anyway, George McCready. So we have Kirk Douglas on one end and then George McCready on the other end. And George McCready plays one of the all-time greats when it comes to cinema villains. I hated that character so much, and I was supposed to, but he plays it just flawlessly. The other element of this I have to talk about before I move on is the script. There are moments in this script that are so small. They could literally be one line of dialogue, and they still stick with me right now. They are just the quips, the one-liners, the intelligence of the script. It is just done so well. Like, I'm just gushing, but like, this is exactly what this movie deserves. It is one of the greatest anti-war films I've ever seen, one of my new favorites, one that I need on 4K because I need that upgrade. Even though the Blu-ray looks fantastic, I just need it on 4K in my collection, and I know it'll come eventually, and I cannot wait. But watch this movie. If you've not seen this, check it out. I know it is a war movie, but it is so much more than that, which I don't do a ton of war movies. I like them when I watch them. I just don't gravitate toward them on like a regular basis. But this is one of the greatest war films I've ever seen. I cannot recommend it enough. Stanley Kubrick is kind of, known as the master for a reason. And this is just another example of that mastery of film. Love this movie. Paths of Glory from 1957 is my second favorite film that I watched in 2021. So before I jump into number one here, let me just say that I agree with what you're thinking before you're even thinking it. Should Paths of Glory been at number one? Yes, the analytical part of my brain says absolutely. That is the better film. But in my heart, I have to go with what I'm putting at number one. Just because, like, this is the movie I could watch over and over and over again. I just have such a connection with these characters. It's a different movie. So even comparing the two is stupid. It's silly, but making a top 10 list, that's just the way it goes. So all of that said, coming in at number one is directed by Zack Snyder. We have Zack Snyder's Justice League from 2021. So again, yes, Paths of Glory is a more important movie. It's a more influential movie. It is a better made movie. It's better in every respect. So I understand that. You don't have to yell at me. I get it. But I just loved Zack Snyder's Justice League so much, I had to end up putting this at number one. So everybody knows what Justice League is about, but essentially this is a re-edit of the 2017 film, which re-edit is such a bastardization of what this actually is because it's a completely different movie. There's the 2017 movie and then there's the 2021 movie, and they have very little in common for the better. And I'll admit right now, I was one of those weird people that actually liked the 2017 film when I saw it in theaters. But now that I see what could have been with the 2021 version, I realize how wrong I was. The only reason I think I have to put this one at the top of my list is just because of like how giddy I was watching this from start to finish, how much fun I had with it. Batman is one of my all-time favorite characters in any medium ever. I love that character. And then you get these other Justice League characters. You get Wonder Woman on here, like just Aquaman, like just the addition of these amazing characters. Cyborg is fleshed out. He's actually a character in this one. Superman's story here I think is so well done. It's just fascinating to watch this world done in, kind of, things that I've been reading about in comic books, and the, Batman 1989, which I loved when I was younger, like those things kind of culminating in this epic conclusion of sorts, or this epic, kind of climax to what these characters can be, was just so much fun. It was kind of just the fanboy in me squeeing the entire time watching this movie. I was surprisingly emotional throughout watching this movie, and it's because of that, like, father-child relationship that really plays in this film with Cyborg and his dad, which you don't really get in 2017 at all. But then there's other, familial relationships here that I think work really well, and just really worked to affect me in a way I didn't expect. This is another really long movie. The longest movie I've watched probably ever, frankly. Like, it was, 4 hours long? Yet, it didn't feel like it as I was watching through this. And then the end of the movie, where they kind of add on these new things, I was loving every minute of that. I never wanted it to end, but of course it had to. So I'm just super disappointed that we're not going to get more from the Snyderverse, because clearly Zack Snyder has so much more to give to this franchise, and I just wish they'd give him the opportunity. But I don't know what else to say about this one. I love this movie, and it's purely, from the heart, as opposed to an analytical thought. Paths of Glory clearly is the better made film, the more important movie, but for me, the favorite has to go to Zack Snyder's Justice League from 2021. All right, guys, so those were my 10 favorite film discoveries of 2021, and I know it's kind of a list that is all over the place, but my brain is all over the place, so that's just the way it goes. But I want to hear from you down in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite film discovery was of last year, regardless of what year it released, whatever your favorite movie was that you watched for the first time last year. I love hearing about those down in the comments below, so please leave those comments down there, and let me know what you thought about my list. Where was I right? Where was I wrong? What did I hate, or what did I love that you hated? What did I hate that you loved, or whatever the case is? Just leave any thoughts down below. I really do appreciate that. As always, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please give it a like down below. That really does help me out. And like I always say, I don't just talk movies, I talk all things media, be it books, movies, video games, graphic novels, manga. If it's media related, I'm interested in it. And if you are too, you might consider subscribing. And with that in mind, I do have a top 10 book discoveries of 2021 upcoming. And I'm going to do something with my video games, but I'm not entirely sure yet what I'm going to do. But it's going to either be like a top 5 list or ranking them, everything I played. I don't know yet, but something video game related is coming down the line here in the coming weeks. So definitely look back for those in the next few weeks here. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to consume some media today. I'll catch you next time.